Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Horror Movie Reviews. I'm joined today by DaBoard.
Woo!
I always stumble over that because I don't want to butcher it. Today, because it's the month of December, we're talking Christmas horror, right? And there's no better Christmas horror than the 1974 Black Christmas.
Must see. Everyone get on it if you haven't. I mean, guys, it's been almost 50 years. What are you doing?
Yeah. There's been 2 freaking remakes, like get the program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not good remakes, but there have been 2.
There's been
There's
that
2.
That seems like a fair note to add. Yeah. This is so as of right when we are recording this is on Peacock. I am going to assume that by the time this goes out, it will be in multiple places because we will be closer to, the Christmas season. And, it's like all of a sudden in the summer when shark movies are on every streaming, everything. It's because it's, 'tis the season. So, yeah. So as of right now, so many years later, Black Christmas sits with a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, a 3.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and 87% on the Google, and 75% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Those are good numbers.
Yeah. So the budget for this, I'm going to tell you this just because it's here and I didn't know this, was $620,000.
That's not a big budget.
No.
Dang.
And it made 4.1 million in the box office.
Hot dang. That is a success right there.
Agreed. So the synopsis is a little too much information. So I'm going to shorten it really quick. Our story takes place in a sorority house on Christmas Eve where, people are getting ready to go home to their families. There's some weird calls coming in and bad things ensue to the girls inside the house.
Solid.
They should let me write their
bad things happen.
Bad things happen. Well, that's considered spoilers. I'm saving that for our spoiler part. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I feel like most people know this is like a slasher movie, right? So it's pretty common knowledge, I feel like. But yeah. So what if you had to give this a rating out of 10? What are you giving this?
Okay. I'm going 10. 10 out of 10. All right.
10.
I'm going there. I'm doing it.
Yeah. No, this is a 10 out of 10 for me as well. This is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It is one of my favorite, of course, holiday festivity type, horror movies. But it's also one of my favorite, what I consider to be like a Black comedy, because I think that there's some comedic elements to this that work really well. And I don't normally say that because I don't like comedy in my horror, but there's just something about this that it didn't lose any of its creepiness while I was thinking some of it was funny. So it's one of my favorite horror comedies too.
Yeah, it's Barb is one of the main characters in it, and she is so great.
Barb is a mood. Like she is the most relatable character.
It's so funny because Barb is such a good character that you could like transpose her into today into 2022 and she'd
totally
be fine.
Work.
Totally work. The dialogue would totally work.
It would totally work. And then the other person that I thought was hysterical, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but is the house mother.
Oh, she
is hysterical. She is so funny. So
oh man, she's clearly someone who like got the job because no one else wanted it. She hates all those girls. She's like their house mother, and she's just going around hiding her secret stashes
in the mirror.
Like, she got like I'm pretty sure she has like a whiskey bottle and like a book right somewhere in the film, and she's just like, let me.
She's fantastic. I love her character so much. She is a lot of the reasons I laughed in the first half of the movie. She's very funny. Yeah, so unspoiled, what are your like unspoiled, thoughts, things that you like, things you didn't?
Yeah, I mean, like we've already talked, the dialogue is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
It holds up. The acting is great. You've got Olivia Hussey?
That's right, I think.
Yeah. And then John Saxon is in it. He's more like a secondary character, but
Yeah.
I love me some John Saxton. So
Yeah.
he's in here doing his thing, which it's crazy that he just looks the same for like it's this 10 years before A Nightmare or A Nightmare on Elm Street, but he just looks the same. No aging in like a decade. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
it's a vampire. Was a vampire.
Yeah, maybe it was a vampire. Got too close
Yeah.
to the sun. But yeah. But and the killer too is just like so unnerving. You know, it's because most slashers, something is taken away when the killer talks and stuff, unless you're into them like doing quips. But in this, him being able to talk and him talking just makes it so much creepier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because you don't really see him. You get these glimpses, but there's that like air of mystery. There's no mask. There's no there's nothing. It's just shadows and dark rooms. And I think like all of that is so like, it's so creepy. And you know, it's funny. Like, I feel dumb for saying this as much as I love this movie, but I never really thought about this movie as like a home invasion movie, but it really kind of is. Which is probably why, or at least one of the reasons that it's so effectively creepy, because it's like just somebody just gets in your house. Like, what do you do? Like, you know,
right. You know, they're just hiding out in there. That would be absolutely horrible. Where I live, I don't have a basement. I got a crawl space. And the only thing that could make that crawl space creepier is if there was just some random dude just camping out there. Oh, God.
I've seen videos like that where people crawl out of things in people's houses, like while they're sleeping.
Yeah,
so creepy. I know. I have an attic because it's a townhouse, so it's 2 stories, and then there's an attic. And I made my brother go up. I was like, you need to make sure there's no dead nothing. Go up there and look. And if you come out alive, I'll stay here.
I'll stay here.
Yeah, I think and then the other really big thing that I always think of when I think of Black Christmas is the that first use of it's coming from inside the house.
Right. Yes.
It's such a big, and we've seen that how many times since then? Like so many times. But this did it first.
Right.
At least in film. I don't know about books, but definitely in film. And it's just such an effective movie. It's very creepy. The kills, I feel like, so I watched this, the last time I watched it was around last Christmas. So it's been like a year, but I feel like when I watched it last year, it was still just as like the gore stuff and the deaths and everything was still just as good as it was the first time I watched it. You know, like they held up really well.
Yeah. And because a lot of them, or no, all of them, I think, are through the killer's POV when he kills them, which, and like, especially with that first one, it's like pretty darn unnerving.
It is. Claustrophobic feeling. You just want to like claw the bag off. Yeah, I know. I think it's I mean the cinematography in this is fantastic. This movie is shot beautifully. Like every scene, every second, like that on like as you're watching the entire runtime is just very, 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 very well shot.
Which kudos to Bob Clark. Yeah, Bob Clark for doing that. Like, dang, way to go.
Yeah. I mean, even by today's standards, again, like that holds up. It's very smart filmmaking because, you know, the way that, and I don't know how much people think about this when they're watching films, but like sometimes I look at the ratios that films are made in, especially horror films, because some of these things, like these camera angles and things that you think are just this like artistic, whatever, they actually work the way they do because they cause a response from the viewers, and you don't necessarily know why. There's just something about like those weird long shots down tables sometimes in horror movies, and they're really unsettling, and we don't really know why, but it has something to do with the space that the camera creates between us and the people that we're watching. But all of that stuff rolls into what makes a horror movie scary, suspenseful, anxiety ridden, all of those things. And the way that this is shot is just so unnerving.
Oh yeah, it's such an incredible job. And I mean, to put it in the killer's POV for a good chunk of it too, brilliant. You know, because hey, it's happened since, But again, I feel like this is one of the first.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think so. The only other one I think of off the top of my head that I think this was kind of influenced by is Peeping Tom, which came out in like the 50s.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say 59.
I think it's the 50s, late 50s. You're probably right.
Yeah.
But the difference, I think the biggest difference is that's usually that was through the camera specifically, not necessarily just our killer as he's killing, which that kind of elevates it to like the next level. But I think that was kind of some of the inspiration was Peeping Tom, which is a terrifying movie from the 50s if you're watching this and you have not seen it.
Which, come on, people. That's even older.
Yeah. It is. It was super edgy for its time as well.
I mean, yeah, in the late 50s, yeah. I mean, a year later they got onto Alfred Hitchcock for showing a toilet. So I mean, come on. In Psycho, I swear.
I know, you just forget. I
thought you were like, that's not true. Come on.
I was like, wait, what? Yeah. So, but yeah, so I think, and I agree with everything that you said. The acting and stuff, I think the chemistry between characters was flawless. I really don't have a single thing about this film that I don't like, to be honest.
I was going to say, even like the flow of it between the scenes and stuff, the plotting is really good. I feel like it just flows correctly. And I mean, I don't feel like there's too much wasted like scenes.
No.
There's, because
I agree.
Even the main character's Jess's boyfriend Peter, even his scenes where he's like doing his own thing, they help add to the sort of tension or progress the plot. It's well done. Well done.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's not a lot of filler for sure. I agree.
Yeah, which that certainly helps too. There's not a lot of filler, and it's you get what you need.
Yeah, it's pretty fast paced. It jumps into things pretty quickly as well, which I loved. I don't think I have a single thing about this film that I don't like. And again, like I know I said this already, but I feel like it's aged really well. So I mean, it's a holiday staple for me. Like I watch it every year.
I mean, Halloween is my favorite horror movie all time. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's it's perfect to me. But I can 100% see how people could watch it and go like, that dialogue maybe hasn't aged too well. I could get why someone would say that. But in this movie, the dialogue is just so, like, it's so witty, kind of fast paced. It's so good. It's just aged like a fine wine.
Yeah, I think witty is perfect because some of the subject material for the time that this came out was a very bold. It's very bold for its time, and I think that's added by the conversations between the characters on top of their on-camera chemistry, and it's beautiful. It's a fantastic movie.
I was gonna say it's a pretty progressive film for when it came out and what it's talking about.
And it's true. Yeah, no, it's true. And we'll dive into that a little bit more when we get to spoilers in just a second. Just in case someone's watching and hasn't seen this movie.
That'd be so crazy. But I know you've told me that you get that sometimes, but it's like, it's been 50 years.
I know. Well, and there's a lot of I guess like classics that I haven't seen, that when I tell people like Sleepaway Camp, when I tell people I hadn't seen it, they're like, oh my God. I'm like, I know. Like, I know. I know. Like, you're right. Oh my God, enough. You're right.
And this one does have like some good, like really good twists throughout.
I agree.
It shouldn't be spoiled. That's fair.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff. And it's pretty good at misdirection on top of the twist, because you definitely get jerked in a few different directions. And you think, to me, the way it plays at certain points, especially like about halfway through, you kind of start thinking like, oh, I know where this is going. And then you're like, oh, nope. Maybe
I don't.
It takes a sharp, like, right turn right when you expect it to go straight. And it's yeah, it's very, I think witty is a great way to describe not just the dialogue but everything about this movie is very, it's a very smart film.
Yeah, and it's very prevalent throughout that they really put their time into thinking out how to do each part of it.
Yes,
like to
I
perfection.
agree. Yeah, a labor of love, you can tell.
Oh yeah.
So,
which I mean, this was Bob Clark's first movie too.
Was it the first? I didn't
I
know
think
that.
I don't know. It may one of his first.
If not, probably one of, right?
Yeah. Which I mean, it's crazy to think that, you know, like like if I wrote a book and it was like of this quality, I would be like, well, all right, that's it. Packing it in.
And we're done.
And I hit the peak. Like that.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and there's others, there's other filmmakers that do that where they kind of like come out of nowhere and then they just like blow the top off of whatever it is that they're working on. But this is a great movie. And a lot of, and I do like that this isn't one that you can say like people don't talk about. People talk about this movie. Yeah. There's still papers being written. There's still conversations being had. And that's a testament to just how witty it is.
Right. And I mean, sure, it's not getting talked about like as much as say Halloween, but it's like you can't really make a series out of this, you know? You can't. And I wouldn't want that to happen anyway.
I was going to say, I think if they turned it into a series, it would lose a lot of its special whatever, its magic.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like a lightning in the bottle
I agree.
kind of thing. You catch it once, that's all you get.
Leave it.
Let's not touch it. And then they touched it 2 more times. But
to be fair, they waited a long time to do the first one.
Yeah, they did. Like a really long time.
And then not very long to do the next one.
Yeah, well, I mean,
2006 to 2018 or 2019.
That's like a good 13, 14 years.
God.
Yeah. Sorry.
I graduated in 2007. I'm like, that wasn't that long ago. It was. Yeah.
I hit you with the biggest horror trope of all time, the passage of time.
Oh, no shit. Yeah. So you ready to spoil?
Let's spoil some things here.
So, all right. So if you have not seen this 100-year-old movie, go watch it. It's streaming. Like I said, it's streaming on Peacock. I'm sure by the time this episode's released, it will be on multiple platforms, or they will get really smart. They know that we're going to want to watch it, or you'll have to pay $3 to watch it on Amazon. But either way, go watch it and then come back and watch us talk about the rest of it.
Do it.
Okay. So, all right. So spoilers.
And see.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of my favorite scenes that made me laugh so hard was when Claire's dad comes to the house because he's like, oh, I was supposed to meet her here and she never showed up. And this poor man, like, I feel so bad for him this entire film. Like all throughout when he's just like moping around, like missing his daughter. But there's that scene where the house mother has been upstairs and that's when she's like drinking in the mirror. And then she like comes around the corner and she's like yelling at the cat and she like drops a bunch of stuff on the stairs. And she's like, I mean, cussing up a storm. She's saying anything and everything you can possibly think of. And she thinks he's gone and he's not. And instead he catches some of the stuff that she's dropped and he comes around the stairs and her face when she sees him and she goes, oh. And then she like takes whatever it is that he brings up. And she's like in a totally different voice. Like she's completely switched back to this other person. She's like, that's so kind of you. I didn't know you were there or something, but like that whole interaction.
Yeah. She turned the customer service switch super fast.
She's like, fuck. And she's like saying whore and like all these things. And then he comes around the corner looking at her, like handing her, and she's like, oh, thank you. I love it so much. That's like that scene every single time I watch this movie. I like have tears in my eyes. I'm laughing mostly because like I've had that happen to me where you think that you're alone and you start saying a bunch of stuff and then you're like the person you're talking about is right there or right behind you or you don't know someone can hear you or whatever. And it's just so funny because she's just so quick to turn that charm back on. And I just think she's a riot.
She's so funny. It's unfortunate that she didn't get to live longer, but oh well.
Yeah.
She got taken out by like, what is it, a random hook in the attic?
Like yeah, because she was up there looking for the cat or something.
Yeah. She was trying to find that damn cat.
Damn cat. And the cat, yeah, and then that's of course where Claire is. She's in the attic. With the bag over her head. And yeah, that's true. But I just thought she was like so funny and just charismatic and almost like too real sometimes. But I really liked her character a lot. And that's like one of my favorite scenes. So like, but anyway, yeah, I like that part a lot. So what's one of your favorite scenes?
So not necessarily like a scene, but just something that they did in the movie that I thought is just like absolutely genius. Is basically beginning of the film. Claire gets killed, she gets suffocated with that bag, and then the killer leaves her in the window of the attic in that chair, and you can like see her from the street the whole time. No one like looks up enough because everyone's and that's the perfection of like, it's the holidays, everyone's rustling around trying to do stuff, and no one takes the time to just look up at that small window
and see notice her sitting there.
Yeah, just notice there's a dead lady. It's just so brilliant that they just did that.
Yeah, it's very like artistic in its place, because like the other thing is everyone's wondering like where she is, and they know all these bad things are happening, but even they are too wrapped up looking for her to see her. Like, because they go outside. There's times where they go outside and like
they're like looking for some missing kids too, and like all of that.
And it never. And you just like, as the viewer, you just periodically get these shots, and it's like, how has no one noticed yet?
Even her dad, when he shows up, he doesn't look up there, and that's even crazier, It
is. Yeah. It's such a point. It's like such a like an important piece to the movie, because it's like, she's there. We watched her die, like all of this. And yet every time they show her, I'm uncomfortable, like every single time.
Right.
Like this poor girl's like left up there forgotten.
But I mean, with his like obscene phone calls and him going around like whispering his random rants,
God, the stuff. Yeah. Oh, man. Stuff he says. And then like, because one of the misdirections is there's a couple moments, especially as a first watch, where you think it's the boyfriend. Do you think it's Jess's boyfriend?
It's Peter. Yeah.
It's Peter.
Like,
thank you. Yeah. Because she's like, I'm pregnant. I don't like that. We're not doing this. And he's like, no, but I want to do this. Like, we should do this. And she's like, no, we're not doing this. And so like, there's this whole conversation with them about like her, she's not keeping. She's like, I'm not keeping it. And so you're just like, well, that's the motive. Like that makes perfect sense. But then it's like, maybe not. Like I went back and forth. From what I remember thinking, I just always assumed it was him. And then, at the end, you get that giant reveal. It's not him.
It's not. And that was like, so the first time, I'll admit, a little embarrassed about it. I didn't watch Black Christmas for the first time until 8 years ago. And I was like, there was a guy doing like a sort of private screening at a movie theater. He like rented it out, was like, I'm going to show Black Christmas. And so my friend and I were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. I was part of his group. So we went there and we watched it on like the big screen. And when it got to that ending, it's so effective where it just pans out to the house, and then you fucking hear the phone ring, and you're like, oh no. Like the cops have all gone because they thought,
we've got it solved.
Yeah, the killer's dead, like, and just Jess is all alone, sleeping in her bed, and it's like, he's on the prowl. He's still
there.
And I don't, it's been since that movie that I have had an ending chill me to the bone that much.
I know. It's really unsettling. Well, and I think too, because that's another thing that it kind of did really well, was it gave us this trope of like, okay, we know who it is. Like, we know who this is. No big deal. and then it's like we didn't, and we don't know where he is, and we don't know like what's going to happen next, and then it just left this like open-ended thing. And there are movies that have always done that, sure, but like this was one that I felt like really really set a standard for what it was like to leave an open-ended horror movie ending.
Right.
Like it just, there's just something about like the all of that unknown, and it just did it so well. Because sometimes you have unknown endings and they make me mad. Like I'm like, oh, I don't like that. But this one's like it's just perfect. It's so effective.
It's so effective, and I think part of it is too is you just never find out who the hell this dude is or why the hell he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, why is he doing these things? And I mean, you can maybe try to piece something together from what like his random rants and stuff, but
yeah, but
like even that's unreliable because it's like he could just be crazy.
Yeah, and that's true too, because like that also is like made worse by the fact that like we don't know who he is, but we also don't even know what he looks like. And we technically don't really know what he sounds like. We know what he whispers like. We know what he sounds like when he's a maniac. But like his like everyday hey on the street voice, like who knows? It could be anyone.
It could be anyone. It's
really
he could 100% get done in that house and just move on. And it's that open-ended enough.
Yeah.
Hell, maybe that's what happened, you know? Maybe
they were just like, yep. Yeah, it's so good. I really I think my favorite kill is the glass figurine.
Oh, Barb, right?
Barb.
Yeah. That one's so good. And like with his eye peering in the halfway open.
Out of the shadow and like, ooh. Oh, so good. That's my favorite one, I think. My favorite kill.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know the first one's like iconic, but
right. But yeah, that one's good too. And it's because like Barb is such a good character.
Yes.
I remember watching it. Like I still do it too, where I'm like, not Barb.
I know. You're like rooting for her. Like you're like, she's gonna be our final girl. Like,
no.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think like what.
I feel bad for Jess too. Like, cause it's like,
yeah.
I mean, she's the final girl, but I'm like, I wanted it to be Barb. I feel kind of bad about it.
Yeah, she's not like our warrior, because she's not as like she is and she isn't, because she's very much like sticking up for herself, making her own decisions, taking control of her life. She's very much a like, I am woman, hear me roar in that sense. But Barb is this just like outspoken, like I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about me person. And that is just so much more like, I don't know, there's something about that just makes more sense for a final girl.
Yeah, like even tricking the cops into like writing down boner and stuff or whatever. And it's like, that's so relatable.
She's a mess. Yeah. Yeah. She's really funny. I think I don't know. And you know how like sometimes, especially like in movies that came later, like like When a Stranger Calls, and like there's other movies like that. But when you have movies where there's like a killer that calls, they sometimes say things that are like dumb or like they're not effective. I don't feel like a single phone call, like every time that phone rang, you were like not prepared for it. You're like, ooh, like I don't want to do this anymore. Like every single time that it happened. It's just, it has so many things that we've seen so many times since that just nobody has gotten it right to this level before, like since then. And I think I'm trying to remember the first time I saw this, because I didn't, I wasn't born when this came out. So I was like, I was born much later. So I didn't see it until I was a teenager.
Right.
But I don't think I really like appreciated it for like what it actually is until I was probably in my mid to late 20s.
Right.
So that would have been like 10 years ago.
There you go. I mean, and and you're right though. Every time that phone gets picked up, it's like, it's incredible how it can be like so obscene to where even like, I don't get to like, from cuss words or stuff, but the stuff it's being said on the phone is like, oh, every time I watch it, I go, oh, what?
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of that comes from the way that the filmmakers were able to make us connect with the girls so early. Because I
Right,
think that part of the discomfort is you feel uncomfortable for them. Like you're
right.
just like these poor girls. Like it's like Christmas Eve, like or it's Christmas Eve, like everything is like supposed to be holly jolly fun family stuff, right? And then well, minus, obviously like it's Barb that has the parents, I think, that aren't there or something like that. But
I think so. Can't
I think
remember.
it's her, and which is why she's like glug glug.
Yeah, she's getting drunk.
Yeah,
Relatable again.
again, it's holidays. I'm gonna drink this bottle all by myself. Yeah, I think because the relationships and the characters, like we get so invested in them so quickly that like when those phone calls happen, like you genuinely feel bad for them, like you're uncomfortable
Right.
for them. And I think it just amplifies like all the stuff, like to your point, like all the stuff that he's saying is so awful and so anyway, but there's just something worse and more dirty about it because we're like these poor girls, like,
Right.
yeah.
And I mean, and the stuff he says too, it's like I don't think I've heard it used really anywhere else in any other film. So I'm surprised, honestly.
Yeah.
I, I
Well, and
mean,
you've also got the sounds that he makes and
yeah.
all. It's
Ooh,
so like
it's so unnerving.
it's so unnerving. Like,
So kudos to whoever did that for the movie.
yeah, if you were going for horrifyingly creepy, success.
Like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Um,
Which
yeah.
I'm glad we're in the spoiler section
Yeah.
because talking about the calls coming from inside the house
Yeah.
is like spoiling two horror movies at once. Because when a stranger calls, which is so crazy to me that when a stranger calls is remembered so well when it literally just ripped it off from Black
It's
Christmas.
so frustrating, isn't it? It made
It's so annoying.
Shudder's what shit 101 scariest moments or whatever, and I was like,
Shudder,
get the
come
fuck
on.
out of here. First of all, that's not even where it came from. And
Yeah.
like, but
What?
there's two stranger calls, right?
Yeah. There's
I think
the
there's two of them.
there's two of them.
They're the same movie, but
Yeah, I
there's two
mean,
of them. There's an older one and a newer one. But yeah, everyone remembers that from that movie, and I'm like, really?
yeah, and all right, hot take. When a stranger calls
Mm-hmm.
sucks. It's not
Yeah.
good. I mean, like, because
It. Yep.
the whole well, because the kids die in the first one. Spoilers, guys. We're in the spoiler section, but I mean, the kids die in it in like the first 40 minutes of the film, and then the rest of it's just like, all right, cool.
It is I agree. It's a very
It's weird.
strange setup for the style of movie they were trying to do because, and this
Yeah.
is like what I was saying about how like no one has been able to replicate the phone call thing doesn't work anywhere else. The only
Truly.
reason the phone call thing works in Scream is because it is a fraction of the concept. There's
Right.
so much more going on in Scream than just the phone call. But when you take a concept like that and you make your entire movie's premise around this one thing with a phone call or phone calls, it's like it's got to be like dead on. And Black
Right.
Christmas is the only one I've ever seen that accomplishes that.
Right. And I mean, because it pops up a good amount, but like you feel,
Yes.
and again, maybe it's because it's they're inside the house, but
Yeah.
like there's some weight to it that something horrible can happen after each call gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's anticipating it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about one girl alone in a house babysitting, there's just something about that just makes me go, I don't care. Like,
right.
I've seen them both. I've seen the other one. I've seen the older one. I've seen the newer one with that girl from the Disney. I can't think of her name, but I felt the same way about both of them. And I don't know, like, I think to me, the newer one, I felt like tried to do a lot more Black Christmas than the first one.
It did. Yeah.
With the shots of the guy that's in the house, like some of those shots were very Billy-esque. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't as effective. I know everyone's like, oh, it was so uncomfortable. It's inside the house. And I'm like, but we've seen it before. Like, it's not new.
It was done before and better.
And better. Definitely emphasis on the better, because I don't have a problem with things taking I mean, like, it is what it is, but you got to make it work. If you're going to take
Right.
something from something that works, yours better work too.
Yeah, and I think it's genius that, and again, this is like no wasted scene. Even somehow they made them like talking to the telephone company guy who's like tracing this call. They made that seem like a a big thing, and like it flowed well with the story, and it does so well when there's like you got to keep them on the line, and it cuts back and forth between
Yeah.
the obscene call and like this telephone operator going hustling his way through
Trying
like all
to go
this.
figure it out.
Yeah, it helps. It
And
helps
they
the whole
don't
thing.
get it the first time either, which made it feel more real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like he hangs up
It's
too
not
fast.
like a detective TV show where they like solve it in 6 minutes. Like
Right.
this was something where like, nope, you got to keep him on longer. And she's like, God, and then so it's like putting her through all of this for longer, and she has to do it again, and it's like the whole thing, like you said, with him shuffling back and everything. It just made all of those scenes, to me, made it just feel like even more real.
Oh yeah, and I can't remember. Are the missing kids even related to what's happening? Because there's like a missing kid too that people are looking for also.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's related, but it adds to it somehow. It adds to that something isn't right. Something's not go.
Yeah, and I think that's part of a misdirection. I think it was added as a means of like to just be like, oh, is this like the same person? Is it like, I think it was just meant to add general discussion. Well, and also you're talking about children on Christmas, like, and they've got the people looking, and everyone that's involved is so emotional, and it's a lot. But I think it's just adding to this concept of like misleading us as to what's really going on inside the house, because it's not as simple as like, oh, there's a killer on the loose. Like it's much more complex than that.
Right. And it kind of also adds to the whole everyone is kind of doing their own thing. Like they're looking for something. And that's why no one is noticing this dude taking out these
girls.
Yeah, these girls one by one. Because everyone over here is like, the police force is kind of looking for this missing kid. And you have like the one bumbling cop back at the station, like monitoring for stuff.
Yeah, and this isn't because one of the things that happens is when they first, who is it? I'm trying to remember who is it that goes to, when they go to the police the first time.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, like you're like, they didn't believe them. They didn't take anything that they were saying serious, which is a very, very real thing. A bunch of, a couple of sorority girls call because they're getting pranks. You just dismiss it and you move on with your night. Right. So like, it was one of those, like, but those scenes were like, those were frustrating too, because like, it was one of those things where like the person who's experiencing the stuff isn't believed, but it made sense that they weren't believed, because like that would happen in real life, I don't know so much about now, but definitely in that time frame that would have happened, because they would have just been like, oh, it's Christmas, like people are just being weird today, no big deal, like go home and sleep it off or whatever, especially because they show up and like Barb's like pissed drunk. Like,
she's really drunk.
But yeah, it's all of that just added to me, like it just made it feel more real.
Yeah, and I mean, because in the weight of it too, like, of like like you said, we feel the weight of each phone call from this guy, and we're on board. We're like, just listen to him, just believe him, something bad's gonna happen if you don't.
Yeah, stop being a jerk and like do your job. Yeah. So true.
Yeah, and like just so how each, like up until the very end, just none of them are like suspecting what is really happening.
Yeah.
And that just adds to it too, that it's like they're just picked off one by one and they just have no idea it's coming. Like because if you think about other slashers, 99% of the time, the people, someone learns it down the line, that's part of the plot, is them trying to figure out how to stop this. But Not in this movie.
Yeah, no, it's a completely
Think
unique
again.
setup. Yeah, and I think numerous movies have tried to do that since and have not been able to pull it off as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just something about this, the way that all of it just comes together, and I just like, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with if they had done like more, like another one and turned it into like a franchise.
Right.
It's like it is genuinely just done so well that I think it would just like there's just no way to replicate how well this worked.
Right. I mean, and it's just it's genius. I don't know if this was on purpose, but all the things around the holidays and everything, just all those circumstances make every element of it believable. And it's
Yeah.
like, what else could you do that for? You know, what, 4th of July? I don't think so.
Yeah, no,
You know?
Christmas is the only holiday it would work. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other big thing, which I know we talked about like technically off camera, but
Right.
was so this movie came out the year after Roe versus Wade was passed. And so all of these commentary things about like body autonomy and abortion and like all these things, it's like it just is such an interesting choice to put that
Right.
in, you know, because this is what, 74. So like the time
Right.
frame and just everything going on in the political climate, to put that in a horror movie was just really not like just a great
Yeah.
touch, I think.
Yeah, pretty bold move too,
Very
honestly.
bold. Yes, very bold.
Very.
But yeah, horror is political. It's been political like since the dawn of time. But it was just one of those things where like you think like it's interesting because you can watch this now, like in 2022 for the first time, and all of those conversations are still resonate, like all of
Right.
it. So it's just very interesting. It's another piece of it that has aged well because it's all still very relevant conversation in today's climate. So yeah, this movie's got a lot of layers to it. It's very well written, well acted, well directed, well made altogether.
Yeah, and the kills, I mean, they're pretty good too. They're not I mean, normally people are like, "Ooh, I love my gore and stuff," but they're not really too crazy gory, but they're just so inventive and unique.
Yes,
You know?
the way that the
Yeah.
way that they're killed is the part that makes you go, "Oh shit," not the
Yeah.
blood. Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I
Yeah,
agree with that.
like Barb getting stabbed with a glass unicorn. It's like
Oh my god, that's my favorite.
it's like, "No!"
Yeah, it's so good though,
It
and none of
is.
it was like you know, in a like some slashers, like they all use the same stuff, you know,
Right.
which I think like you know, there's a couple of exceptions to that, obviously, but like there's usually like a knife, right? Like there's this normal
Right.
like pattern of behavior for slashers, and this is just so outside the box.
Yeah, it's like, well, we got a plastic dry cleaners bag,
Yes,
glass unicorn, a
unicorn.
meat hook in the
I
attic.
guess.
I can't, I'm not 100% sure what it is that kills the
I
house
yeah.
mother.
It's something he brought with him is actually what I was assuming, but I guess we don't
Okay.
technically learn what I don't know.
Right. But it's just like, these are some strange things like to kill people with,
Yeah,
you know? And I
yeah.
can't remember the name of the girl with the glasses and how she gets killed. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. But I think it was something out of the ordinary, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah, me either.
Oh well.
But it is one of those things though, you're right though, where the type of kill is the part that leaves you like, ugh, not the blood and the gore.
Right.
Which I mean, you know, we're talking about, you know, mid 70s. So I mean, they weren't green screening this, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's no like movie magic. The movie magic was what you could do with your bare hands and the stuff you found lying around. So in that, I mean, what I said the budget was like 62,000, 620,000. I can't remember now.
Yeah, 600,000, I think you said. Yeah.
600,000.
Which
That's
not
like,
much.
I mean, by the time you've paid actors and the location, like, and you've
It's
got
double
multiple
prison.
locations, like that's a really tiny budget.
Yeah, it's like not much.
No. So it's impressive to me that they pulled this off the way that they did. It's aged as well as it has, and they only spent $600,000 on it.
They hit all the boxes.
It does.
And you just don't do it that often,
That's
It
so
just,
true. No.
it's crazy.
Yeah. I don't give my 10s easily. I really don't. Like, I'm not a hard, like, I'm not hard to please as far as like the movies that I like, but to get me
Right.
to like a 10, it's a pretty big deal because I
It's
just don't
pretty
give
big,
them
yeah.
away very easily.
I was gonna say, because I can like a B-rate slasher that is inherently not a good movie. Like I can tell it's
Sure.
not good, but I enjoy it. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, getting to that 10,
It's hard.
it's tough. You gotta do a lot.
You do. And it has to be something that leaves me with always more to say about it, which is not always
Right.
common in horror either. So,
Yeah. And I mean, like, I was gonna say, going back and watching this, it's not necessarily like, oh, I see something new each time. It's
yeah.
just I'm still just impressed each time.
Yeah,
And
you feel like you feel the same way that you did the first time you watched it every time you watch it. Like you know exactly what's going to happen and you're still just like, "Oh, like
oh man.
yeah, just like,
Oh,
oh, that's so uncomfortable or oh, that's so awful. I don't like that." All those
right.
good horror things, right?
And just it's truly, again, I don't think I've had any other horror movie since I saw it have an ending be that spine tingling.
I I'm
It just
serious. Me neither. I just it's at least not in the same way. I mean, I've
right.
definitely had things that have made me uncomfortable, but I think in very different ways. Because this is like psychological too. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot. It's not just a slasher. I don't know. There's just a lot going on with it. It's like I said, it's got layers.
Yeah, and the ending of this too feels like, it's just pulling the rug out from underneath you.
And it knows it. It's like
Yeah.
laughing while it does it. Like, haha, you thought you knew.
Just like it to go from like the feeling of like, okay, this is the ending, things worked out, to just straight hopelessness in 20 seconds.
It's so quick. It happens so quick. And you know what's interesting? So I remember like the thought process when I rewatched it. Technically, it's like a second watch, but it had been so long, and I was like a totally different person in my 20s than I was
Right.
when I was a teenager. I remember going into it again, and I didn't trust when she was in the bed. I remember because I did, but I'd forgotten that was how it ended because
Oh,
I just forgot. It'd been so long since I had seen it, and I remember being like, I don't like this. Like, there's just something off. But as a first time watch, you totally trust it. You're just like,
right.
okay, we're good. It's always the boyfriend. It's always the whatever, right? So we knew we had our motive, our killer. We're good. Close the book. And then, but I do remember specifically going into it as a second watch and being like, why do I feel like I can't trust this scene?
Why something's off here,
Something's off. Yeah.
Oh man, and
Yeah.
indeed it is. Oh,
Yeah. So
beautiful.
Black Christmas,
74.
1974.
Recommend to everyone.
Yes, this is a great movie. Yeah, it's streaming. You should watch it. Honestly, it's worth the $3.
Yeah, I would say so too. Honestly,
And
to
it's like,
watch it.
and if you're a horror fan, I feel like sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and rent stuff to watch that's old as hell anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to do it, even if you don't know if you're gonna like it. Maybe that's just my life, but that's what I do. I'm like, I don't want to spend $3, but I have to.
And I feel like there's enough in this too for like everyone from every walk of like horror.
I definitely think so as well, because it's like I said, it's definitely not just some like cookie cutter slasher film by any stretch of the imagination. There's definitely some stuff I think for everybody. I agree.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a slasher per se.
No, it's definitely multiple things. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree. Cool. Well,
nice.
That's our thoughts on Black Christmas, 1974. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. 'Tis the season. This is like peak holiday horror. Like, it doesn't get too much better than this.
It truly doesn't.
Yeah,
what else you get to watch? Silent Night, Deadly Night? I don't think so.
I hate that movie so much. I cut it off after like the first 15 minutes.
Uh-oh.
There are 2 new Santa movies coming out, though.
Okay, well, okay. Maybe.
One is about a robot, and one is got Hopper from Stranger Things. I don't remember.
Black Christmas it is. Black Christmas it is.
That's our thoughts on Black Christmas. So definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on this Saturday. Have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy your week coming up, and we'll see you in the next one.